We're following breaking news here in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. and nearby Alexandria, Virginia. I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting from Washington. A gunman opens fire during a congressional baseball practice at a YMCA field in Alexandria, Virginia. That's right outside of Washington, D.C. According to both congressional and law enforcement sources, the shooting appears to be deliberate. We're told the shooter is in custody and is being taken to a local D.C. hospital right now. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise has been shot. At least 2 Capitol Hill police officers were also hit. We know at least 1 congressional aide, a staffer, was also shot. The president tweeted this just moments ago. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, a true friend and patriot, was badly injured but will fully recover. Our thoughts and prayers are with him. That is from the President of the United States. Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama was on the scene. He's joining us on the phone right now. Congressman, first of all, how are you?
Well, I'm a little bit shooken up. The adrenaline is starting to calm down a little bit. The emotional aspect of it is still there. It's something I'll never forget. I mean, how can you?
It's an awful, awful situation. So, Congressman, for viewers here in the United States and around the world who are just tuning in, tell us what you and your fellow Republican lawmakers were doing at that YMCA field and what happened.
Well, it's Eugene Simpson Stadium, which is the home of the Titans, the same high school team from Remember the Titans, if you recall that football movie. That's where we practice. Maybe the YMCA has an ownership interest. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything about it being a YMCA, but we were practicing for the congressional baseball game, which is tomorrow night. Democrats and Republicans play in Washington National's baseball stadium. 10 to 15,000 people show up, and it generates $600,000 for local charities. So it's a charity ball game. It's a pretty big deal in Congress. Presidents will show up on occasion. And so I left my condo about 5:30 in the morning, rode my bike across the Potomac, past Reagan National Airport, to the ball field in Alexandria, and we were doing batting practice. I'm on the third base side of home plate, and I hear this bam, and I look over towards the third base dugout, and on the other side of it, it's a cinder block dugout. I see what appears to be a rifle, and then a quick succession of shots. I see the shooter. He's probably about 80, 90 feet away from me because I'm on the third base side of home plate. And I figure out, if I can see him, he can see me. I immediately ran around home base to the other side of the batting cage. It has a big 4-foot-high blue plastic barrier around the batting cage. Hid behind it as there's a long succession of shots. In that, at the very beginning, I hear Steve Scalise say something loudly. I don't know if it was a scream or a cry for help or I'm shot or something. But he's on the ground in between first and second base. He was fielding balls at second base. And I'm lying on the ground with 2 or 3 other folks behind this plastic near home plate. And I'm thinking, well, a bullet will go through that. But he can't see me. But then again, he might come around the third base dugout and around home plate and have a clean shot at us. And we'd be lying on the ground, easy targets, 10 or 15 feet away. And in fact, that's what he ended up doing. But because of that risk, the 2 or 3 of us that were lying belly down on the ground, we made a decision, individually or collectively, I can't remember, but we all got up and we sprinted over to the first base dugout where it's about a foot or 2 drop into the ground, so you at least have some cover. But we have nothing but baseball bats to fight back against a rifle with. Some other people are jumping in. I remember Jeff Flake was sitting right next to me. A staffer comes in. He's got a bullet hole in the calf of his leg. He says he's fine, but he didn't look too fine to me. So I pulled off my belt, and myself and another gentleman used the belt as a tourniquet. But I don't remember who was next to me. It was such a blur. It might have been Jeff Flake. It might have been somebody else. And as the tourniquet is put on to stop the flow of the blood. We're lying face down as best we can be, breathing dugout dust, and then we hear loud gunfire, blam, 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 in addition to the gunfire that's coming from the rifle, which is almost nonstop. and look up, and fortunately it was one of our guys shooting back with a pistol, a guy with a rifle about 120 feet away. That caused that man, the shooter, probably caused him to take cover. But it was rather startling, as you can imagine, to look up and there's a pistol being fired about 5 feet from your head. And the joy I felt knowing it was one of our guys. I'll never forget that guy. He also got shot somewhere in the process, defending Congressman. Eventually, the shooter came around the third base dugout like I had feared he might, and he got behind home plate. And I think that's where our guys, our security detail, both of whom were shot by now, took him down. And somewhere in that process, we hear the cries of shoot her down, something to that effect. Steve Scalise, in the meantime, he's drug himself to the outfield grass from the infield dirt. And if you go out there, there's a long stretch of blood. And I think Jeff Blake might have been the first one out of the dugout to run to Steve Scalise, first or second. I followed seconds thereafter. Eventually, Congressman Brad Winstrup, who was the physician, came out there. Someone brought some liquids, Gatorade or water for Steve. He was getting thirsty, as you can imagine, with blood loss. I forget who was first applying the pressure to the wound, but when Brad Winstrup got there, he was cutting the leggings of Steve Scalise to get directly to the wound. I think I might have mentioned this, but in case I didn't, Brad's a doctor from Cincinnati, and it was great having him there because he knew exactly what to do. He asked me to apply pressure to the wound, and I did that while he was working on the pants. And at some point, the Capitol security guy who had already been shot, who had helped take down the shooter, came limping over to us in the outfield, totally ignoring his own wounds, to check on the person he was primarily responsible for, Steve Scalise being a part of the House leadership team, number 3 in command of the House of Representatives of the United States Congress. And, you know, we insisted that he go back and get tended to because he was bleeding, but he was doing his job. And I'll tell you, those two security details, those two Capitol Police officers, they showed incredible bravery to be in a gunfight, pistols against a rifle from 90 to 120 feet distance. As you know, that kind of distance heavily favors the rifle. One of our security detail, from what I understand, was shot in the chest. A helicopter landed, after everything was secure, a helicopter landed near where Steve Scalise was on the ground. And one of the two, I don't know if it was Steve Scalise or the Capitol Police officer, was airlifted out, whichever one was most critical. At this time, the shooter's on the ground. I don't know his condition. And, I'm still at the ball field. I'm going to shortly ask the detectives if I can get to my wallet and my backpack and stuff that I need to vote on the House floor later today. Hopefully they'll let me get through, but right now we have this yellow tape. But that's my way to get back to the Capitol.
Well, Congressman, I know that this has been an awful situation. I understand that there was security there. There's a protective detail from the Capitol Police because Steve Scalise is a leader. He's the majority whip in the House of Representatives. Otherwise, I've been told there wouldn't have been any police there. Is that right?
Well, if we hadn't had that security detail, we would have been at the mercy of the shooter, and he had a lot of ammo. I mean, in my judgment, he shot at least 50 times. I don't know how many times that the Capitol Police shot back. It was substantial once they were in a position where they could engage him. And yeah, but for the Capitol Police and the heroism they showed, it could very well have been a large-scale massacre. All we would have had would have been baseball bats against a rifle. Those aren't good odds.
When you say a rifle, do you have any idea what kind of weapon it was?
No, I was about 80 or 90 feet, roughly speaking. I was on the third base side of home plate, swinging baseball bats, warming up because I was about to take batting practice. When I heard the first slam and I looked around, I saw the barrel right next to the chain link fence. It might have poked through it a little bit, might have been right behind it, but he was shooting through the holes in the chain link fence at it. And then I saw the full gun, and I saw him, but it was about 70, 80, 90 feet away. And I quite frankly wasn't focusing on the type of rifle that it was. I recognized that if I could see him, he could see me, and all he had to do was shift my direction about 20 or 30 degrees, and I was a sitting duck.
And there were two police officers from the Capitol Hill Police Detail there with the Majority Whip, Congressman Steve Scalise. Is that right?
I don't know if they were there for the protection of the entire congressional delegation. We often get this kind of protection because we're in a high-risk occupation. There are bad guys out there that want to get us. But certainly, if not for the whole of us, they were there because of Steve Scalise, because he's third in command in the House of Representatives. He's one of the senior leaders of the United States government.
He's
so
the congressman from Louisiana.
Who made the decision that they should come, if it was a part of Steve Scalise's detail or if they were doing double duty for all of us, and we would have had security anyways. But for them, we would not have had a chance.
Well, I'm just wondering, how many police officers were there protecting you?
I only know of two. It's possible there was a third one that I did not see, but I'm only familiar with two officers who were here. Keep in mind, I don't ride in the Capitol Police vehicles to and from the Capitol. I think Steve Scalise does as a part of his security detail. I ride my bicycle about 9 miles over the Potomac and south of Reagan National Airport to get to the ball field, and then I ride my bike back. It's normally it's a beautiful day and great exercise. Today it's going to be a lot more somber. And
we're just told, Congressman, that Capitol Police have deployed what they're describing as a robust police presence throughout the area of the U.S. Capitol, clearly for protective purposes, to just be on the side of caution right now. Do you have any idea, Congressman, the shooter, who's now, we're told, who's in a local D.C. hospital, he was shot by Capitol Hill police who were there on the scene. Do you have any idea about motive? Were there any statements made? Can you describe what you heard and what you saw as far as the shooter is concerned?
I never heard the shooter utter a word. Certainly nothing before the shots were fired. Once the shots were fired, I did not hear him say anything, but as you can imagine, bedlam broke loose. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of hollering. People were yelling, shooter, shooter, active shooter. In the dugout when we were lying on the ground, there were a couple of folks who had their cell phones with them who were screaming into the cell phones for backup that we were under attack. We had no defense other than the two law enforcement officers who were there.
And that is it. And we know, I'm looking at the roster of the 2017 Republican baseball team, and you guys, as you point out, were supposed to play. I assume, I don't know if that game is going to take place over at Washington Nationals Park tomorrow as scheduled, but I count 34 Republican members of the House of Representatives and Senate as part of your team. Do you know how many showed up for the practice this morning?
If I had to guess, and I'm not one of the coaches, Joe Barton and Roger Williams of Texas, they're both congressmen. They're the two coaches. My judgment would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 were here at the beginning of the practice. But when a lot of people, they start to leave after they've had the batting practice segment of it. We typically do, well, at least today, we did outfield first, and I'm an outfielder, fielding. And normally I stay in the outfield almost the whole time during batting practice, in which case I'd have been in left field in clear range, clear line of sight of the shooter without any place to hide. But for some reason today, I left the outfield a little bit early, and about the time I got to home plate with a bat in my hand and the helmet on my head is when the shooting erupted. So I don't, but for the grace of God or good fortune, I'd be in the hospital with Steve Scalise right now.
Have you been told, Congressman, about his condition, Congressman Steve Scalise?
Well, there were about 4 or 5 of us that ran out there to tend to him, to look after him, and he seemed to be conscious the whole time. Of course, he was in pain. There's a trail of blood from where he was shot in the dirt infield to the grass infield where he had crawled to. And when I say crawl, I mean he never got, I don't think there was ever any distance between the grass and himself, the dirt and himself. It was pulling himself along the ground. He wanted liquids, which is often what happens when you have a loss of blood. You're thirsty. And so someone ran back to the dugout and got him some things to drink. That was going on while I took over. Whoever was helping with the compression on the wound left for some reason, maybe to go get the water. I don't know the reasoning. I mean, what happened? But at that point, that's when Brad Winstrip was there. He was helping. And if I recall correctly, he asked me to put pressure on the wound with a cloth. He had been doing it, and I think that was so that he could then start cutting through the pants to try to get to the leg wound, get a better view of it, and see what he as a physician could do. So we were very fortunate to have a physician on the team. And, of course, those 2 Capitol Police officers, the bravery they displayed, pistols against a rifle from 90 to 100, 120 feet, that's not good odds. And they both took bullets trying to protect our lives.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much for updating all of us. Unfortunately, you're okay. I know that Brad Winstrip is a physician, and Senator Rand Paul was there as well. He's a physician as well. So at least 2 medical personnel were on the scene, but it was a dangerous situation. Fortunately, those Capitol Hill police officers were there and could deal with this, and hopefully everyone will be okay. Let's hope that Congressman Steve Scalise and the others who were shot and injured are going to be okay. Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, thanks very much. Good luck to you, and we'll stay in very close touch.
Thank you for your thoughts and prayers, Wolf, and the CNN audience. A lot of people who are wounded need it right now.
Yeah, we certainly send all of our prayers to all of you, all the members of this Republican baseball team. Do you know, has anybody said anything about whether this actual game at Washington Nationals Park tomorrow will go forward, or is that still right now pretty much up in the air?
There was some discussion during the period of time in which we were herded together and surrounded by law enforcement officers on the chance that there was a second shooter. That was probably about the time that the helicopter was carrying off one of the 2 most injured people. And there was discussion about it. I don't know. That really hasn't been foremost on my mind. I do know that there was a discussion. I don't think there was a decision made. Probably that decision will be made later today. And it's a real shame. It raises $600,000 this year is what we've raised for charity, for Washington, D.C. charity, to help folks who are needy. And it's a great bipartisan event. Democrats and Republicans get together. We have a good time together. And for this to happen as a part of that is just shocking, unbelievable.
It is totally awful. And we're told just now, Congressman, a staff assistant and aide to Congressman Roger Williams, a man you know from Texas, that staffer has been shot. Among those, he's now been identified as among those who have been shot. Was he the one who was shot in the calf? I don't know where he was shot, but we're just being told that he's among those who were shot. Still had my belt on him around his leg when he was being carted off by the medics. I hope it was put to good use. It seemed to be. Yeah, we're told he was shot. He is receiving medical attention, we're told right now. But once again, we don't know his condition. Hopefully he will be fine. And I know the baseball practice that you Republican members of the House and Senate had, it was beginning very early, 6:30 a.m. That's normally when you practice before the business of the day gets underway up on Capitol Hill, right? Yes, sir. I leave my condo near the Navy Yard at about 5:30 in the morning and bike the 8 or 9 miles to the ball field. And then we start warming up around 6:15 or so and start taking fly balls and infield practice around 6:30. Normally it lasts till about 7:15 to 7:30. And then we rush back to the Capitol, take our showers, and start the workday. Is it usual, and I know you got to run, Congressman, a quick question. You practice at the Eugene Simpson Stadium Park in Alexandria, Virginia. Are there usually spectators who show up and watch you guys practice, or is this pretty much closed?
There are people who live in the neighborhood. They might be walking their dogs or doing something like that, and we have a good rapport with them. We'll say hello to them. Everybody on the other side of the street, please. We say hello to them, but they've been nice. We've been nice, and then this happens.
Yeah. Awful situation. All right, Congressman Mo Brooks, good luck to you. Good luck.
I know you got to go.
I'm
further away from the ball field by law enforcement.
Congressman, thankfully you're okay. We will stay in close touch with you.
All right, take care. And prayers to those who are injured.
Yeah, certainly, I totally agree. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, by the way, tweeted just a little while ago, "My heart is with my former colleagues and their families and staff and U.S. Capitol Police, public servants and heroes today and every day." Our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr, is on the scene for us. Barbara, tell us what you're seeing right now and what's the latest information you're getting.
Hi, well, we're actually just about 10 minutes south of the Pentagon, and if you look over my shoulder, you will still see a very active police presence here. About a block or two down on the left is where this baseball field is. We are behind police lines at this point. Just a short time ago, Chief Michael Brown of the Alexandria Police came out to brief reporters to bring everyone up to date on the law enforcement situation. He said that they got the first call of this emergency at 7:09 this morning and that they were able to be on the scene within a few minutes. The indications are that both the security detail from Capitol Hill and Alexandria Police were able to return fire against the gunman, who is now, we are told, in custody. The chiefs indicating that this now is still very much an active crime scene, but assuring people that the neighborhood is safe, that there is no concern about additional gunmen here at this time. He didn't use those exact words, but he did make the point that they consider the neighborhood safe now. 5 people transported to the hospital, and now a very active crime scene. We saw federal agents a short time ago from the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau show up. We know that FBI is working this. City police, state officials, Capitol Hill police, because, of course, an attack against members of U.S. Congress is a federal law enforcement issue. So this will be a very lengthy, one can assume, investigation. They say that they have many witnesses, obviously, to interview about this, to put all the pieces together about what exactly happened. The chief of Capitol Hill Police also coming to brief reporters, but not offering details about the condition of the victims. That's certainly a privacy issue for them and their families, and not giving any details about the attacker. They are not releasing any information at this point, but they did say, and this was about 25 minutes ago, that they would be back to further brief the news media and the public in about an hour and a half. Wolf?
That's the Alexandria Police Department. They're on the scene, but Capitol Hill Police, they are there as well. And as you point out, they'll be briefing all of us. An hour or so. Barbara Starr, I'm going to get back to you shortly, but so stand by. We're also getting a lot of reaction from members of Congress, the leadership. As I pointed out earlier, a tweet that Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, just put out this morning. The hearts of the whole House are with Representative Steve Scalise, the brave Capitol Police staff, and all those who were in harm's way. And as we heard from Representative Mo Brooks, maybe 25 or 30 members of the Republican baseball team. The roster has about 34 members in the House and the Senate. They were getting ready for a big game against the Democrats tomorrow at Washington Nationals Park. They were practicing early this morning, as they've been doing, batting practice, field practice, and all of a sudden a shooter shows up and starts firing from a rifle. Joining us on the line, joining us right now is David Woodruff. He's a local resident who was actually, I'm told, David, you were running in the area when the shooting took place. Tell us where you were and what you saw.
Yeah, indeed. Good morning, Wolf. I live about a mile and a half west of here. I was out for a usual Wednesday morning run. When I happened to look over at Simpson Field, noticed that there were a group of folks out playing baseball, which I thought was a little out of ordinary for it being that early in the morning, but didn't think that much of it. Took about 15 more steps, and at that point I heard 12, 14 or so gunshots ring out. Clearly they were gunshots. They were going one right after another. I'm not sure if it was an automatic weapon or not, but got about another 10 or 15 more steps in and heard some more shots, and at that point was down the street a little bit here east of Monroe and was able to duck into a parking garage where I was able to call 911. I spent about 10 or 15 minutes in there until the situation seemed as though it was getting under control. More and more Alexandria PD coming in, Capitol Hill Police coming in, came out, and I saw immediately two members of Congress that I know and that I work with from time to time. And it was at that point put two and two together and realized this was the congressional baseball game practice that was going on. So at that point, then, obviously, a grave situation took an even more serious turn.
And all of a sudden, in addition to the Capitol Hill Police who were there on the scene, I'm told because Representative Steve Scalise is the majority whip, the number 3 Republican in the House of Representatives, he is automatically protected. He has a protective detail from Capitol Hill Police with him. Fortunately, they were there and could deal with this shooter. Based on everything you saw and heard, one shooter, right?
Yeah, that appears to be the case. Again, in talking to a few of the members here and talking to some of the other witnesses, from what I heard, it sounded as though it was one shooter, and it sounds as though there was just one person involved here. It was pretty remarkable how quick the police were able to get on the scene. U.S. Capitol Police had Eagle 1, their helicopter here, in and out twice to evacuate two of the first victims, and that had to have been within the first 10 or 15 minutes of this incident being over.
Did you have a chance, David, to speak with any members?
You know, I did. I talked to two members of Congress that I know. They were clearly shooken up, clearly distraught. We talked very briefly. I asked them if they needed anything. They said that they were fine, but clearly this was a terrible day for both of them.
Describe the neighborhood. This is Alexandria, Virginia, Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., as Barbara Starr said, just fairly close to the Pentagon. Describe the area where this shooting took place. A residential area?
Yeah, very much. You know, I've lived here for over a decade now. It's a great, quiet area. Really, if you were to be dropped in here, you'd never know. You're only about 7 or 8 miles as the crow flies over to the U.S. Capitol. I was actually out here last evening with my son, who was playing in the Alexandria Little League Championship game. That kind of typifies this neighborhood. It's a great place for when folks often come to Washington, will work on Capitol Hill, and then start a family. They will often move to a place like Delray here in Alexandria. So to have something like this happen here in Alexandria, something that was clearly planned out, clearly thought in advance, is really, really shocking. Yeah,
this was not like a rough neighborhood or anything like that. Very quiet, residential, peaceful area, Alexandria, Virginia, where, as you correctly point out, a lot of government workers from Capitol Hill and elsewhere reside. So in your 10 years that you've lived in this area, have you ever heard or seen of a shooting along these lines?
No, this is really remarkable. This is really a terrible day for Alexandria. No, this is definitely out of the ordinary for folks here in Delray and in Alexandria.
Yeah, David Woodruff, thank you very much for your eyewitness account. Are you okay, by the way?
Oh, you bet, you bet. I'm just need.
Thanks so much for that. I want to go to the White House right now. Our correspondent Jason Carroll is there. We're getting reaction from the president, the vice president, and others. What else are you hearing over there? What's been the reaction, Jason?
Well, let's first start with what we're seeing. We've seen an extended security perimeter around the White House here. That's standard procedure whenever there is some sort of a security threat even elsewhere. So that's what we're seeing here. In terms of what we're hearing, the president and the vice president have been briefed about the shooting there in Alexandria. Both of them weighing in. Let's start with the president first. The president tweeting out, also releasing a statement. The president saying the vice president and I are aware of the shooting incident in Virginia and are monitoring developments closely. We are deeply saddened by this tragedy. Our thoughts and prayers are with the members of Congress, their staffs, Capitol Police, first responders, and all others affected. And Trump also tweeted about this incident as well. Wolf, I want to bring that up for you. Representative Steve Scalise, a true friend and patriot, was badly injured but will fully recover. Our thoughts and prayers are with him. The vice president was scheduled to give a speech at about 9 o'clock this morning. That speech obviously canceled. He, too, has weighed in on this incident as well. He tweeted the following, saying, "Karen and I are praying for Steve Scalise, Capitol Police, and all hurt for a speedy recovery. Our hearts are with them and their loved ones." Wolf, obviously, this is an act that has hit very, very close to home here at the White House. Wolf?
Any indication, Jason, we're going to be hearing from the president about this? Any word yet from White House officials?
Well, it's a good question. The president, as you know, Wolf, today had a very light schedule. It is his birthday. The only schedule that he initially had on the books was for an event at 3 o'clock with the Labor Department. All indications expect that we are expected to hear something more from the president later today. Yeah,
I will stand by for that. All right, Jason Carroll, thanks very much. Another eyewitness to the shooting is joining us. Noah Mathan is joining us. Noah, tell us where you were and what you saw.
I was there's a dog park right next to the baseball field that comes here every morning. So I was just going into the dog park, and it's sort of like a double gate just so the dogs can't get out. And so I was in one, and then I heard the first shot, but I just thought it was fireworks. And then when I heard the second shot, I realized it's not fireworks, and people were starting to scatter. So I just dropped right to the ground. I didn't get a chance to lock the gate, so I just kept holding my dogs to make sure they wouldn't run off. And there was a lot of shots. You can hear them going by. You can hear them skimming off the gravel, hitting some of the fence. And then after a couple shots, I realized that there's some trash cans right there. Let me try and get behind them. And so I was just laying on the ground. And I was like, well, let me do something. It's sort of very frustrating where you're just there's shots and there's nothing you can do. It's like, well, let me get my phone. And, you see all the movies where they have these phone footage trying this evidence. Well, let me get my phone out. So then I was just recording. So I got like 5.5 minutes of video. The police have that. They're still downloading it. So hopefully that's something worthwhile. But it looked like it was about 100 yards away. I
was going to interrupt for a second. No, you actually did see the shooter. Is that right?
I didn't. I saw where the shooter was shooting from. So it looked like he was shooting from. There was like a little snack shop or dugout in that area. So and then I saw where the officer of the security were shooting back at. And then it took a couple of minutes, and then the police were able to get there, and then more people were shooting. But it seemed to go on for a good 5 or 10 minutes, and it was just sort of laying on the ground, pretty helpless, couldn't really do anything. We saw people running, trying to get away. As soon as they realized that where the shooter was at, they were able to run and get behind a building. But I was sort of just sprawled out on the ground, just trying to record video. Hopefully it would be worthwhile. And then after it was done, all the shots stopped, and then we were able to get up and try and realize what just happened.
And you've given your video over to police. I assume they're collecting evidence from as many people as they possibly can at this stage. And we're going to be hearing from Alexandria Police as well as the Capitol Hill Police within about an hour or so for more details. You go to this dog park, I take it, fairly often, right?
Yeah, I live right in the area. Yeah, and the Republicans, they practice here every morning. So, I guess if you live in the area, it's a regular thing. They're here practicing for the game. I don't know how obvious that is to people who don't live in the area. But, usually it's not people coming around and, watching. It's not like a big spectator sport. They're just here practicing. They usually get here after 6, and they're here till about 7:30. And then I guess they go to work. But, it's a nice deal. It's a nice community. It's, a nice family community. It's not... there's mom and pop shops everywhere. This isn't a franchise area.
Yeah.
And it's really close to D.C. But yeah, so whoever came wasn't. I don't think he was from the area. I think he came just for that purpose. So Delray is a really nice, safe area.
And we know the shooter was shot himself by Capitol Hill police who were on the scene and is now in a D.C. hospital. Thanks so much, Noah, for that eyewitness account, and good luck to you.
Sure, thanks.
I want to go to our senior Washington correspondent, Brianna Keeler. She's up on Capitol Hill. Brianna, there must be a strong sense of shock up there right now. About 30 members, Republican members of the House and Senate, were at this baseball practice early this morning.
And then you also have Republican and also Democratic members, Wolf, who are just very connected to this game, because as you're hearing there, you have members who practice regularly, and then this game, as well as the Congressional Women's Softball game, which is actually a bipartisan group of lawmakers. There aren't as many women, obviously, to field a team. They play journalists. I played on that team for years in that game. These are games that are really rites of summer. And these are practices that have been going on for months on a regular schedule. As soon as the weather starts to warm up, the softball seasons get going for both teams. And it's this source of camaraderie and certainly even a little trash talk around the Hill, something that people really enjoy as they look toward these games. The men's game tomorrow, the women's game next week. But we have just heard from or spoken with a couple of Republican members of Congress. They were getting information developing as it was coming in. So we spoke with Dave Bratt of Virginia. He was certainly shocked. And, you know, he had concerns where he was thinking about a number of these members who they ride their bikes to the practice. He was well aware that they were practicing and obviously very shocked that this had happened. The same with Congressman Sean Duffy, who, you know, Wolf, you've interviewed many times. He was hearing developments while he was doing a cable television hit, and he was hearing those developments coming in live, and you could just see just how shocked he is. So they're here on the Hill. They are waiting to figure out exactly what is going on. We do know that things are starting to be affected. This was going to be a rather busy day of hearings and markups of bills. We already know that some of those are starting to be canceled. There was a House Natural Resources Committee hearing that was actually on gun legislation. That has been canceled until further notice. You can see that tour groups are still going on behind me. Certainly everyone is cognizant when it comes to Capitol Police of what's going on. I do want to add a little context, Wolf, just because I lived for years a short distance from that park, that dog park that man you were just talking to. That's where I would take my dog. It's right adjacent to those fields. The YMCA, where the bullets came through the windows, that is someplace that I have been. In fact, there's a whole series of windows where people, at least they used to be, on treadmills, and they would look out toward the park. So you can imagine at that time, that is peak workout time, just how many people were around and sort of at risk as this was happening. But this is, you know, as you think about it, you think about the security risk of repeated practices at the same time, during the same time of the year for years on end. You can see how this might be a concern, but I think especially in a community like the Del Rey neighborhood of Alexandria, which is so idyllic, you just wouldn't think that this would happen. This is a community that prides itself on its main street. As you heard that man say, this isn't a franchise area. That's on purpose. That is an area that is families. It is you know, you go there on a weekend, which I just was. I actually went there in the last week or two, and it's stroller central. I mean, this is a very idyllic family neighborhood that we're talking about there in Alexandria. Yeah,
it's right outside of Washington, D.C. Shimon Prokopez, our justice producer, is telling us, Brianna, that law enforcement does now have a tentative identification of the shooter. They're seeking to confirm it. They're not releasing a name yet. A law enforcement source says that they clearly will be releasing the name once they get final confirmation. But this is described by Shimon as a tentative identification of the shooter. And very quickly, Brianna, this baseball game, the Republican House and Senate members versus the Democratic House and Senate members, the men's baseball game, it was scheduled for tomorrow at Washington Nationals Park. As you correctly point out, for those of us here in the nation's capital, this is a big deal. And as Congressman Mo Brooks says, they raise about $600,000 for wonderful causes. I don't know if the game is going to go forward tomorrow at this point at Washington Nationals Park. But just like the women's baseball game, the men's baseball game is these members of Congress and 34 Republicans on the roster of the Republican team, and I assume a similar number on the Democratic team, they take this very seriously. They do take it very seriously. It becomes very competitive. You can certainly imagine as you have the Republicans versus the Democrats there. And the men's team is this very big production because it is there at Nationals Park. But like you said, Wolf, you're familiar with this event. This is an event that not only is it this, you know, dozens of members of Congress who are playing, there are so many people who attend
staffers, members of Congress, other Washington officials, and it is a gathering that a lot of people look forward to in the summer. Yeah,
I was at the Washington Nationals game Monday night, and throughout the game they were promoting Thursday this big game between House and Senate members, Republicans and Democrats, and they were looking forward to it.
And Wolf, I would say, having spoken to one Republican member of Congress, they're finding it difficult, obviously, to believe that this game is going to continue tomorrow night. They expect that this is going to be canceled. We don't have that word yet. But then also how the schedule is just going to be affected here in the House of Representatives. Today, we're already starting to see that. But, you know, obviously there are going to be some changes going forward, we would expect. Yeah, we certainly, and you could just hear how shaken some of these members are. We spoke at length with Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, clearly shaken. Rand Paul, who himself is a physician, shaken, understandably so. Individuals, Jeff Flake, the senator from Arizona. This is an awful, awful situation. As you can tell, Representative Brad Wenstrup, I should point out, he told an aide, he's an Iraq War veteran, by the way, that the shooting, quote, was like being in Iraq again, only without his weapon. He's okay, he's unhurt, but clearly these members, these Republican lawmakers who were there, were clearly shaken by what they saw. And it didn't just go on for a minute or two, Brianna. It went on, we're told, for about 10 minutes, and maybe 50 shots were fired by the shooter with this rifle. Unfortunately, Capitol Hill police were on the scene. They were armed, and they could respond and take him down. He's now he's now injured at a local D.C. hospital. Anything else you're getting, Brianna? I assume the speaker and others will speak out at some point. They've already issued statements. They've tweeted. But I assume they're going to go before the cameras at some point and talk about this. Yeah, I expect so, and we're still waiting. I think things are in flux here, Wolf, but I think we're going to get news very soon about how things are going to be changing. The House floor was supposed to gavel in at 10 a.m. We're going to see here if that happens. But, yeah, we're expecting that this day is going to be very much different, and I think we are going to be hearing from the Speaker very soon, although we don't have that officially at this point. And you heard there, Wolf, even talking to members of Congress, and we've heard this from the ones that we have spoken with here in Statuary Hall on Capitol Hill. There is a detail, obviously, during this practice, because you have leadership there, but there also are a lot of members, I think you heard from one, who had biked to this practice. And when you're talking about the type of weapons that we're hearing, just sort of what a match that is for what that detail may have been up against. This isn't something that they're used to encountering, obviously. They are prepared for this, but this is a situation where you can see it appears that it was just at odds, really, this obviously the element of surprise, the resources that the detail had at their disposal, and whatever they may have been dealing with coming from this suspect, who now, as you mentioned, the identity has been determined, but we don't know what it is. And one final question, Brianna. The condition of Representative Steve Scalise, the majority whip, any update? We do not have any updates. We are checking on that. I do believe that we are checking with the hospital as well, but certainly here from Capitol Hill, we do not have those updates. All right, stand by. We're going to get back to you. Brianna Keeler's up on Capitol Hill. I want to bring in Joe Giacalone. He's a law enforcement trainer, former NYPD sergeant, also our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Joe, first to you. Walk us through what is happening right now based on all the information you're getting.
Hi, Wolf. Well, first of all, you're going to have to worry about the search warrants. That's why they're not going. So what they're going to do is they're going to find his car, they're going to find his house where he lives, they're going to be executing search warrants, and they don't want the media or anybody else to find out ahead of time because they want to make sure that they don't know they're coming, because the police want to make sure that they go into these locations and that they might not, be booby-trapped and what have you. So that's the first thing. The second thing that one of the witnesses, the jogger, said that kind of that I was a little upset about was that he was talking to other witnesses. The police out there have to make sure that they separate these witnesses, that they don't talk, because witness contamination becomes a huge problem in these cases. So, they don't deal with a lot of shootings in these areas. It's like everyone's saying, it's a nice, quiet, bucolic neighborhood. well, the police might not be used to these kind of things, and they have to make sure that they're separated. It's extremely important. The second thing that they have to do is make sure that there aren't any cars that this individual drove in at the location. Make sure that is, if it is, make sure that's been rendered safe. You know, all through emergency exceptions right now, they can do these things, but eventually they're going to have to get search warrants. So when we released the information finally of who this individual was, we want to make sure we have his internet records, we have his cell phone records, and probably there's a lot of residential surveillance cameras in this location. So those investigators should be going door to door in the neighborhood, asking family members if they have surveillance cameras, because they might have had this on tape. And that's something that they can't obviously look at, overlook. It's extremely important. I mean, these are the three things right now: the cell phone records, internet records, and surveillance videos that's going to help the police put this together.
Sanjay Gupta, we're told that Representative Steve Scalise was shot apparently in the hip, but that doesn't sound like a life-threatening injury, right?
Not typically, no. I mean, the good news here is that the central nervous system, spinal cord, obviously not in that area, and also no vital organs. That's clearly what you worry about.
Sanjay, hold on for one moment, Sanjay, because we're just getting a statement from the office of the Majority Whip, Steve Scalise. So let me read the entire statement to you, and then we'll assess and to our viewers. Quote: "This morning at a practice for the congressional baseball game, Whip Scalise was shot in the hip. He was transported to MedStar Washington Hospital Center, where he is currently undergoing surgery. He is in stable condition. Prior to entering surgery, the Whip was in good spirits and spoke to his wife by phone. He is grateful for the brave actions of U.S. Capitol Police, first responders, and colleagues. We ask that you keep the Whip and others harmed in this incident in your thoughts and prayers." Finally, the statement adds, "This office will release additional information regarding the Whip's condition as appropriate." All right, Sanjay, so let's assess what we heard. He's in stable condition, shot in the hip.
Stable condition, in good spirits, spoke to his wife, obviously awake, conscious to be able to do that. That's not surprising, as you point out, in part because these injuries to the hip, if there's good news and all that, you don't have vital organs in that area. It doesn't sound like he had blood loss that was significant enough to impair his consciousness. It sounds like he received fluids immediately, and certainly, I'm sure, en route to the hospital. But the other part of this is, sounds like what was being described was a rifle, a long barrel. Those are going to be higher velocity wounds, so it can still be a very significant wound. You do worry about the amount of injury to that part of the body, but also some blood vessels in that area, which may be part of the reason he's getting the operation now, is to either stop any bleeding or prevent any of that bleeding from occurring from this injury. That's typically what happens. That's part of that whole stabilization process. But, these types of rifle injuries, obviously much more significant than a handgun injury, for example, mainly, again, because the velocity of the bullet, and the doctors, the teams, the medical teams there have to sort of figure out exactly what occurred as a result of this injury and work on fixing that.
And when they say he's in stable condition, describe what that means precisely, because we've heard all sorts of descriptions of conditions: good condition, critical condition, but stable, what does that generally mean?
Well, stable is actually a sort of a vague term in that regard, because someone could be completely unconscious and still be stable. We know that's not the case here, obviously. It typically is referring to their blood pressure and their heart rate. And for in a trauma setting, it's most sort of reflective of blood loss. That's what you're most concerned about. Has there been significant blood loss? Is there ongoing blood loss? Has that blood loss affected the patient's, the congressman in this case's, ability to maintain his blood pressure? And it sounds like it has not. He's been able to maintain his blood pressure, his heart rate, breathing on his own, as you heard again, was able to talk to his wife on the phone. So that's typically what they're referring to. And it, as you might guess, it bodes well. Doesn't mean he doesn't need an operation. Doesn't mean the injury wasn't significant. Doesn't mean he may not need future operations as a result of this. But right now, the indicators are certainly pretty good in terms of his recovery from this sort of injury.
Yeah, and he's now undergoing surgery at the MedStar Washington Hospital Center, which, by the way, is not that far away from Capitol Hill right now. Once again, Congressman Steve Scalise, the majority whip, the number 3 Republican, the number 3 leader in the House of Representatives, was shot in the hip earlier this morning, 6:30, 7 a.m., when they were all doing some baseball practice in advance of the big game with the Democratic members tomorrow. We don't know if that game is actually going to go forward at Washington Nationals Park. Sanjay, stand by. Representative Dave Bratt of Virginia is joining us right now. Congressman, you were supposed to be joining us to talk about a whole host of other issues. You're not here as a result to talk about those other issues. But I just want, while we have you, I just want to get your reaction. You know this area. You know Alexandria. You know these Republican members of this baseball team, the roster, about 34 members. Give us your reaction.
Yeah, well, we all know the risks, and I think, it brings back our youth to go play ball, but we had members riding bikes over there, 50 of us in public, and I think we need to do a better job thinking through the security risks. We're all thankful that Scalise had his crew there, or otherwise, Rand Paul said it would have been just a slaughter. And so it's too bad, you get the politics, but I learned about it in the weight room, sitting next to one of my Democrat friends, and we're riding the bikes and 20 other guys. And yesterday, it was all partisan with the Sessions thing, and everyone's, yelling and screaming. But we all do get along well, and the Democrats were our brothers today, and everybody was shocked and concerned, and we were just watching it unfold together. And just as pieces come in, we just heard votes got canceled for today, so we're not sure about the game tomorrow night, and we'll see. We'll see what we do. But we've got to do a little bit better planning. And then immediately it brings town halls to mind too. You got 1,000 folks, people that want to, give you their views as constituents, et cetera. But we have the security thing now is going to be ramped up to a new level. If it takes just one person that's just off the rails on a certain day, it's not good.
Our law enforcement producer, Shimon Prokopez, says that law enforcement, Congressman, they do have a tentative identification of the shooter. They're trying to finalize that. Have you heard anything at all from your colleagues who the shooter is, any motivation, anything along those lines?
No, we heard one of my colleagues, Ron DeSantis from Florida, said he was on the team, and he said someone did show up prior to the shooting. He said, "Are you guys Republicans or Democrats?" And he reported that on the news earlier today. And so that, that's not good. And we don't have knowledge of that connection, but that, it's in the air, right? There's some folks out there who just ratchet it up too high.
But you don't know if that individual who asked if the team players, the members, were Republicans or Democrats. You don't know if that actually turned out to be the shooter, right?
That's right. That's right.
It just could have been somebody saying, are you Democrats or Republicans? Could have just been an innocent question about these members of Congress practicing for a big game tomorrow, right?
No, that's right, and that's right.
Yeah, so I just want to be precise before law enforcement. They're going to have a news conference, we're told, fairly soon. Capitol Hill Police as well as Alexandria, Virginia Police, where this incident occurred. What's the mood generally among your colleagues right now? You say you were at the gym up on Capitol Hill working out this morning when you heard the bad news.
Well, it's just terrible. Everything was focused on Scalise because he's our buddy, and then Roger. There's a couple other colleagues that came into play, but I heard there's more serious health concerns with some of the staff that were shot. We heard one in the chest, maybe, and so that our heart goes out there. That's the big deal. Hopefully, Scalise is good, and we all love him. He's just a great guy. And so we're thinking there, but then your brain just races ahead to those with more serious conditions, so that's where we all are right now. We're just waiting hoping everyone is doing okay. And then I got 50 texts within 10 minutes from all the people back home. You okay? Were you there? So I can't imagine these families what they have to go through. And then I do want to thank all the officers that do put their lives on the line every day. We take it for granted. They're all super people. They help us in every way. And so we want to thank them. And a couple of the guys, raced out in the middle of the field today. Mo Brooks was out there, member of Congress from Alabama, putting his belt on Scalise, or one of the guys, as a tourniquet right away. So he's got guts. So it brings out the finer angels as well.
It certainly does. We spoke to Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama. He told us he did take off his belt. He thinks it was a staffer. We do know that a staffer working for Congressman Roger Williams of Texas, a man I assume you know, that one of his staffers was injured, and we don't know if Mo Brooks put his belt on that staffer, but we don't know the extent of all the injuries. But you're right. Presumably some of them are serious. We did get I don't know if you heard, Steve Scalise's office put out a statement saying he was shot in the hip. He's now undergoing surgery at the MedStar Washington Hospital Center that's very close to Capitol Hill. He's described as being in stable condition, but prior to entering surgery, Congressman, he was described as being in good spirits, spoke to his wife by phone. So that's encouraging. And you know Steve Scalise well. I've interviewed him on many occasions. He's very highly regarded among his colleagues, right?
No, he's a jovial guy. I mean, he's like Reagan, right? I'm sure he probably almost cracked a joke about it. And it's not funny, right? But he's the kind of guy that'll make you feel at ease even if he's going through pain. And he's just that way. He's always, everyone, he goes up to the podium at our conference meetings and cracks the ice, lightens the mood no matter what tough bill we're dealing with. And he's that kind of guy.
We're told he's the first member of Congress, sitting member of Congress, to be shot since Arizona Representative Gabby Giffords was shot back in January of 2011, and she put out a statement expressing her deepest sympathies and support for Steve Scalise. So it doesn't happen all that often, but even once or twice, and I'm sure you agree, that's way too many times.
Right. No, it goes straight to us, and then your family is emailing you and making, the wife back at home, the kids, they're immediately, hey, are you taking care of yourself? Are you being safe? So we're going to have to make sure our trips and our big events where you have multiple members together, we're thinking through things a little bit more thoroughly going forward. It's unfortunate, but that's the world right now.
So what I hear you saying, out of an abundance of caution, when you have a town hall or any of your colleagues, Democrat and Republican, when they have a town hall, they're going to have some significant security there. I don't know if you need metal detectors, but a lot of folks just walk in and they want to participate, but you got to have some security, I assume.
Yeah, well, I think after this event, that's going to change the calculation, and we always look back in retrospect. You can see it more clearly, but when someone sneaks over the White House fence and flies planes on the White House lawn or whatever, and then all of a sudden, okay, hey, we should be thinking it through ahead of time. But now our sergeant at arms, we got great professionals, and so they'll ratchet it up and give us good guidance and counsel back home. And then we have our state sheriffs and police back in my counties. They show up for the town halls and do a great job. But if you get someone of this caliber this morning, that the intent is that vicious, it's hard to be prepared to handle that kind of a contingency.
It certainly is, especially when you're out there just practicing, playing baseball, and all of a sudden a horrendous thing like this occurs. Congressman Dave Bratt of Virginia. I'm going to speak to Congressman Chuck Fleischman right now of Tennessee. He's a Republican. He was there on the scene. He's joining us on the phone. Congressman, first of all, tell us how you're doing.
Wolf, I'm shook up. Thank God I'm a little bit bloodied from jumping in the dugout when we were under fire, but there were several other people shot, hurt a lot worse. Just a horrible, horrible morning for us all, and a sad day for America.
Are you still there at that baseball field, or are you back home on the hill?
They kept us in an area that was blocked off until everybody was interviewed, and then the Capitol Police came and got us in a bus and brought us back to Capitol Hill. So all of us who were able are now back on Capitol Hill in our offices.
So walk us through what happened. Where were you when the first shot, you heard that first shot?
Yes, sir. Well, we were close to the conclusion of our practice. We practice every day. The Republicans and Democrats both have a baseball team. I play on the Republican team. This is my 7th year. So I was walking from left field down the third base side and said hello to my good friend Trent Kelly, who was at third base. And like we always do, we were talking. And then I walked towards home plate, and I heard a single large pop. And I'm not a ballistics expert, but I said to myself, gosh, that sounds like a gunshot. But I didn't think of anything. And then there was a pause, and then there was just a barrage of gunshots. And I was with one of our coaches, Larry Hardy, who was a former Major League Baseball manager. These folks come out and they help us practice. We hit the ground behind home plate, and I looked at him and I said, there's an active shooter, and people were running, so we were afraid that we were going to get shot. So we ran and we jumped into the dugout, and we got into the dugout, and bullets were flying, and unfortunately some people were hit and were bleeding. A lot of us, like myself, were bleeding because of where we got bloodied trying to run for cover. But just a harrowing scene. It seemed like it took forever to actually subdue the shooter. Fortunately, the Capitol Police were there, but apparently they only had pistols. So we were really literally crying for help, and help did finally arrive. And just a terrible, terrible time. Our whip was shot. Steve Scalise was shot. One of our staffers who helps volunteer was shot in the chest. It was just a horrible, horrible scene. I have never been personally fired at before, and it was just horrible, sir.
Congressman Fleischman, the reason there were Capitol Hill police there, we're told, is because Steve Scalise is the majority whip, and he's always accompanied by a protective detail. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct, sir. The Speaker, the leader, and the whip on the Republican side have 24/7 security with the Capitol Police. No one else does. But for the fact that they were there, it could have been a lot worse. As a matter of fact, when the gunfire, by the time we made it into the dugout, and there were children there too. This is what's so sad about it. Children who come out to watch their parents play and their relatives play. We were all huddled in the dugout. Others were trying to run for cover. But there was a real fear when the shots were continuing on, Wolf, that this gunman was going to come in the dugout. We'd have been sitting ducks.
If the Capitol Hill police detail had not been there, there would have been no police, no security, and this shooter with a rifle, it could have been so much worse, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the fear factor was horrific because by the time I got into the dugout, I saw several other members bleeding. I saw one gentleman who had been shot in the leg. There was blood all over. It was horrible, but we did not know when it was going to end. And it's my understanding that the Capitol Police only had pistols at that time. So the calls for help went out to get assistance, and I understand local police finally did arrive, but it just seemed forever because I actually stayed pinned to the wall on the inside of the dugout because I figured that was the safest place, and we were all kind of huddled in there. But as anybody would get up, we would tell them, please, please get down, because we didn't know exactly where all the shots were firing from and whether or not there was more than one shooter. It turned out to be one shooter, but I had to walk right past him. When I walked past third base from left field, he just decided not to shoot me. So I was very fortunate.
We're told there's going to be a briefing from members of Congress at around 11:15, maybe a little bit more than an hour or so from now, Congressman Fleischman. We're also told that there's going to be a police briefing, Alexandria Police, Capitol Hill Police. They're going to be briefing us fairly soon as well. Two of the shooting victims, we're told, Congressman, they're being treated right now for gunshot wounds at the George Washington University Hospital here in Washington, D.C. They are both, we're told, in surgery. Have you been told anything at all about a possible motive from this shooter, Congressman?
Nothing at all. And as I say, it came as a complete surprise. Wolf, we go out every day when we're in session. Both teams do, and one of the nicest things we do, the game was actually set for tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be canceled or not. It's an annual game. It's gone over 100 years. It's very fraternal. But this was a routine day which turned into a nightmare because of this shooter. But don't know a motive. And again, at first, when I heard that first pop rang out, I thought it was a gun. I didn't know it was a gun. But within a matter of 30 seconds, there was a barrage of bullets flying everywhere. And many of my colleagues, I talked with one, Trent Kelly, who was running in afterwards. The shooter just missed him. I mean, as horrible as this has been, it could have been a lot worse, but for the fact that the Capitol Police were armed and were able to return fire.
Yeah, it's hard to deal if somebody has a rifle, maybe a high-powered rifle, as opposed to pistols. There were two representatives, two members of the Capitol Hill Police there, part of the protective detail for Congressman Scalise. They were there, and they had to deal with this until Alexandria Police and other police showed up. How long did it take, do you know, Congressman, for the backup to show up?
It seemed like an eternity. In reality, it was probably only a few minutes, but I remember talking with my members and the people in the dugout when we finally jumped into the dugout and got off of the field and out of the direct line of fire, that when are they going to stop this guy? Because he kept firing and firing and firing, and he had to have some type of an automatic rifle because it was a barrage of bullets. There was no question about that. And we really feared that he was going to be coming in the dugout, and no one was armed in the dugout. We were just with our baseball gear and the like. So it seemed like an eternity, but we heard return fire his way, but and then, of course, the backup came, and apparently they subdued the shooter.
You have no idea about possible motive of the shooter. We have been told that law enforcement has tentatively identified the shooter, who's now in a local hospital, but you have no idea what possible motive, what could have possibly motivated the shooter to open fire on this Republican baseball team.
None whatsoever. And it is our practices are very active. They're lively. They're fraternal. Staffers come out and help. Ex-major leaguers come out and help. It's really an annual ritual that we go through, and it's one of the things that has brought, I think, Republicans and Democrats together for years. Is the congressional baseball game.
Yeah,
I mean,
if
you're a ball player, we know who the ball players are on both sides. It's always very fraternal. This is a tragedy, and sadly, I think this is going to change the way that we're going to have to practice in the future. And this is my 7th year on the team, but we have always felt safe up until today, and today was just shocking and horrific.
Yeah, Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, I spoke with him earlier. He pointed out that this game, which has been good to Washington, D.C. tradition, the game is supposed to take place tomorrow at Washington Nationals Park. You guys, because of the game, you raised, about $600,000 for very, very important and worthy charitable causes, right?
Absolutely. For years, this game has grown into a wonderful charitable event for Washington, D.C. Children, a lot of great causes. This year was a record year, $600,000 raised. It's very fraternal. We get about 15,000 people come to the game. A couple of years ago, President Obama actually attended the game, and I remember I'd stole a couple of bases. He looked down at me and he goes, "You're still good." And I said, "Well, thank you, Mr. President. That's something I'll be able to tell my grandchildren." But it has always been really something that really both sides in Washington comes together. But to have this happen on a baseball field, Wolf, I've loved baseball since I've been a kid. I grew up a strong New York Met fan. I remember 1969 like it was yesterday. And I've always loved baseball, and I've always felt safe on a baseball field, and now I don't know if I'll ever feel safe on a baseball field again.
Yeah, it's a sad, sad situation. You're a New York Mets fan from Tennessee. How does that happen?
Happened a long, long time ago, 1969, Miracle Mets. I was 7 years old, and they won it all. It was one of the greatest sports moments in history for me as a 7-year-old kid.
Is there any indication, any word you're getting, Congressman, whether this game will take place tomorrow at Washington Nationals Park?
We spoke with the Speaker of the House briefly on a conference call on the bus when the Capitol Police were taking us back to the Hill. He assured us of his prayers, of his support. He indicated that he would be getting with Leader Pelosi, and they would be making those decisions in the ensuing hours. Under the circumstances, though, I just don't see how the game could go on. I worry about the security, but that decision will be made. If they do make the decision to play, of course, I will play for my beloved city of Tennessee. But right now, our thoughts and prayers have got to be with those people who have been shot and who have been severely injured. I saw one of our managers, Roger Williams. I think his ankle was broken. As I said, there was such chaos in the ensuing moments. You just don't realize until you're under attack with live bullets what's going on, and people were just scattering and just sheer and utter chaos.
I will point out that they do have good security at Washington National Park, metal detectors for all the fans coming in. They can get a big crowd, and you're absolutely right. They will get a big crowd. I don't know if the game is going to be rescheduled, but once if it's not taking place tomorrow, once it's rescheduled, Congressman, I'm sure there will be a huge crowd that will show up, and the $600,000 that you hope to raise, I'm sure that number will go up significantly as well. Unfortunately, it's all the result of a horrendous shooting. Congressman Fleischman of Tennessee, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck.
Well, thank you. Wish you the best.
I wish you the best as well. Wish everyone the best who was injured and everybody who's shaken by this horrendous situation. I want to update our viewers right now. We're following the breaking news after a gunman opened fire at a congressional baseball game outside the nation's capital in Alexandria, Virginia. Among those shot, the third-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives, Congressman Steve Scalise of Louisiana. At least 2 Capitol police officers and a congressional aide were also wounded. Sources now tell CNN the shooting was a deliberate attack. That's a quote, a deliberate attack. The gunman is in custody, has been taken to a D.C. hospital. Police believe they know the attacker's identity. They have not yet released a name. Congressman Mo Brooks was of Alabama. He was on deck when the shooter opened fire. He was getting ready for some hitting practice. He explained what he saw.
It was long enough for me to see the shooter discharge the first half dozen or so shots, figure out that I was in clear sight. If he shifted his view a little bit to the right, I would be the next closest to him. To dive around the batting cage, helmet and my bat in hand, lie there for some period of time. It seemed like a long time, but it might have been 30, 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. Keep in mind that when you're in this kind of circumstance, judging time is very, very difficult. During, it's strictly guess. I mean, you keep and run. When you get up inside,
we got some technical problems there.
Risk that he'll come around the third base dugout, and then he's got about a 10 to 15 foot clear line of sight if people are lying on the ground behind a plastic shield, which of course is not much of a shield at all, and ran from there, sprinted to the dugout. I don't remember if we collectively made the decision to seek better cover in the first base dugout, or if one of us got up and then we all got up. Nonetheless, enough time to get to the first base dugout. Still, I'm hearing no return fire. I'm in the dugout. I see the staffer who's got a leg wound take off my belt. Myself and another gentleman, and I don't know who, and the staffer, we apply it as a tourniquet. Then I'm lying face first, along with some others, face first to the ground, breathing dugout dust. When up to my right, I'm at the far end of the dugout now, I'm on the first base line. And to my right, I start hearing with a pistol. And I'm going, oh my goodness, is he one of our guys, or is he, is it a double shooter situation? It took a second to figure out he was one of our guys, and that he was firing back now at the shooter. And it was one of the best sights I've seen in my life.
All right, Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, an eyewitness. He's on the Republican roster, the 2017 roster for the Republican baseball team. We're told, by the way, that the majority whip, Steve Scalise, was shot in the hip. He's described as being in stable condition, in good spirits. We're also told he's being treated at a local D.C. hospital. He's undergoing surgery, we're told, right now. President Trump expressed his condolences, his support just a short while ago, tweeting this. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, a true friend and patriot, was badly injured but will fully recover. Thoughts and prayers are with him. We're also told, by the way, that the president just canceled an event that he had at the Labor Department later today. He will be making a statement before cameras at the White House at some point. So we will, of course, stand by to hear from the president. He's being briefed on this very, very disturbing situation. Let's go to Marty Lavore. He is an eyewitness to the shooting. Marty, thanks for joining us. Where were you and what did you see?
We're ready.
I was standing along the first base line using a long lens, photographing members as they were in the batting cage. I looked over and I saw a man behind third base outside of the fence. And I saw this long weapon, and I assume it was a rifle with a clip. And what went through my mind was, why would anybody have a rifle shooting birds outside of a baseball practice? And then we heard the shot, and members and all the staff ran for the dugout. I landed on top of a congressman, and the shooting stopped because the clip was finished. And then I started to get up, and somebody in the dugout literally saved my life because they said, "Stay down." And then they said, "Get closer to the wall." Well, it turned out that was the best advice, because I've been told that there is a hole in the cinder block in the back of the dugout. So again, I saw the shooter, white male, and then what happened after that, while we were lying on the ground, we heard a different set of gunfire, because you tell the different sounds. That was the Capitol Police, and they only had pistols, I believe. And it was the Capitol Police that saved us all. If it wasn't for the Capitol Police, I would assume that everybody would have been killed this morning.
Did you did you get any indication what kind of rifle this individual had?
I'm not a shooter, so I don't know. All I know is long and black, and that's as much as I can give you. I don't know anything other than that.
We're told, Marty, that the entire incident occurred over about a 10-minute period. I know to you, who you were there, you were fearing this was a life-threatening moment for you. Did it seem like 10 minutes?
No. There was no accounting for time in that situation, number one. And number two, the firing started, and you could hear enough of a clip being finished. Then we started hearing the other fire, and so it was always sporadic. And when we thought it was done, then it would start again. And it was the Capitol Police that really made the difference.
The Capitol Police, the two Capitol Hill police officers who were there, part of the detail protecting Steve Scalise, the majority whip. Do you know how long it took for backup to show up from Alexandria Police, for example?
Absolutely. I have no indication of time. In a situation like that, you're not looking at your watch. You're just staying down close to the wall. And it was surreal. I mean, it couldn't be happening. This was a practice for a charity baseball game. And so it was totally unexpected. I've been photographing these games for over 30 years, and I do the Republicans and the Democrats, and it's camaraderie. And so this incident was totally out of context, and everybody was totally unprepared for it. again, I just thank the Capitol Police.
Marty, are you okay?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I landed on a congressman when I went into the dugout, and I have no idea who it was, but he cushioned my fall. But yeah, I'm okay.
All right, Marty Lavore, thank you so much. Good luck to you. This is a shocking moment indeed. Let's go to the scene right now. Art Roderick is joining us. He's our CNN law enforcement analyst. He's a former assistant director of the U.S. Marshal's Office. So tell us what you're seeing right now, Art, and what are you hearing?
Well, first of all, this is right in my neighborhood. I live less than a half mile from here, and the area is basically a residential area right on the edge of the Del Rey area in Alexandria, Virginia. And there's a grocery store, there's a drugstore, there's a YMCA, there's a dog park, and there's also a soccer field that's used by little kids all the time, and it sits right off Route 1. So this is a very quiet area, mainly residential. But I'm hearing from law enforcement sources that when this game started this morning, not only did they have the protection detail here from the Capitol Police, but as a courtesy, usually, and this occurs in most locations, when there's a protection detail going on, the local PD had, I believe, 2 officers here at the scene at the time that the shooting went down. And what I'm hearing is that the shooter actually had an M1 rifle, which is a .30 caliber weapon, semi-automatic. Its range is up to 300 yards with iron sights, so it's a pretty devastating weapon, and it's a very high-powered weapon. So what I'm hearing from witnesses is this staccato-type firing coming from that weapon, and then a reload of the magazine, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
How many rounds in a magazine?
Well, without actually looking at the weapon, you have anywhere from 20 to 30 rounds, and in generally some magazines, there's smaller ones that carry 10. So it's either 10, 20, or 30 round capacity in that type of weapon. It looks like they've also possibly located the vehicle, which was only about 10 yards from that third base dugout, his vehicle that he came out of right when he started shooting. So there was short distance between his vehicle, where he had some cover in a period of time, and where he started shooting from that third base dugout.
Yeah, I think we've seen that vehicle. I believe, and maybe we can show our viewers, I believe it was a white van. Is that what you're hearing?